A long time ago, in the heart of Tarsus, a kingdom that spanned the valleys and ridges of a great mountainous range, there was a prince named Rafik. He was known throughout the land for his unparalleled beauty, a striking young man whose face was the very image of nobility. He was the son of King Farouk and Queen Laila, rulers who had once been the epitome of grace and wisdom, but their son was anything but humble. Prince Rafik's arrogance knew no bounds. His beauty was his pride, and his heart was as cold as the marble floors of his palace. He never had patience for the suffering of the common folk. He would look down upon beggars, insult the councillors, and show no mercy to the peasants who walked the fields of his kingdom. His every word dripped with scorn, and his every action was marked by cruelty. One day, as a storm raged through the kingdom, an old woman, ragged and weary from her travels, came to the palace gates seeking shelter. She was bent with age, her face covered in wrinkles, her clothes threadbare and torn. As she approached the palace, she called for mercy, asking for a place to rest. But Prince Rafik, sitting on his gilded throne, did not even look up. He had no time for the poor, and he dismissed her with a flick of his hand, ordering his guards to cast her out. As the guards attempted to remove the old woman from the premises, she turned to Rafik, her eyes glowing with an ancient, unearthly light. "Remember, young prince," she said, in a voice that was both frail and commanding. "Beauty can be a curse. You will wear the form of a beast until your heart is humbled. Only a true act of kindness will set you free." Before anyone could stop her, she disappeared into the storm, her figure vanishing like a shadow. Rafik laughed at her words, but as he did, he felt a strange tingling in his body, a sudden heat rising within him. His limbs began to twist, his face contorting into something grotesque, and his once pristine body began to change. His legs morphed into hoofs, horns sprouted from his forehead, and a coat of dark fur covered his skin. His face twisted with a monstrous visage, a satyr, half man, half goat. Rafik screamed in agony as he fell to the ground, his once proud form now that of a beast. The transformation was complete. The guards, who had once feared him, fled in terror, and the kingdom was thrown into chaos. The curse had come to fruition. And so, Prince Rafik, once the pride of the kingdom, was forced to wander the wilds of Tarsus, hidden from the world, a prisoner in his own body. His arrogance had condemned him to this fate, and only a single act of kindness could free him from the monstrous shell that bound him. Fatima was a girl of about 16, living in a small village on the outskirts of Tarsus. She lived with her father, a humble carpenter, in a simple wooden house. Fatima was known for her beauty, yes, but more so for her kindness and compassionate heart. She was gentle and always sought to help those in need, whether it be the poor beggars that passed through her village or the sickly children who needed care. One day, while Fatima was helping her father repair a broken shelf in their home, she began to feel an inexplicable restlessness, as if something greater awaited her. Her grandmother, an old woman who had raised her since her mother's death, often spoke of the strange dreams she had as a child, visions that foretold things yet to come. That night, as Fatima lay in bed, She dreamt of a distant kingdom, hidden behind the mountain ranges, surrounded by a dense and ancient forest. She saw a figure, a man, but not a man, a creature, half human, half beast, whose eyes glowed with sorrow. In the dream, the beast spoke to her, calling her name, saying, "Only you can break the curse, only you can help me." Fatima woke with a start, her heart racing. She could not shake the feeling that the dream was no mere fantasy. The vision seemed so real, so urgent. The figure, the beast, was someone who needed her help, and the message was clear. She had to find him. Her grandmother, seeing the troubled look on her face the next morning, asked her what was wrong. "I dreamed of a man or a beast, a prince cursed into a monster," Fatima explained, her voice trembling slightly. "He needs me, Grandma. I think I have to find him." Her grandmother sighed, her ancient eyes filled with knowing sadness. "Fatima, some things are not meant to be solved. There are places in this world that are best left undisturbed. The cursed prince of Tarsus is one of them." "But why would he call for me, Grandma? Why would I dream of him?" Her grandmother said nothing more, but took Fatima's hands gently into her own. "Sometimes, dear, we cannot find what is destined to happen. Go if you must, but be careful. The curse you speak of is not something that can be undone easily." That very morning, Fatima made up her mind. She would go to the cursed prince. Her heart told her that if anyone could break the curse, it was her. She packed some supplies and left a note for her father, though she knew he would not approve of her decision. The road to Tarsus was long, and the journey itself was not without dangers. Fatima passed through villages where the people whispered in fear about the curse of the prince and the legend of the monster who haunted the forest. But Fatima's resolve did not waver. She continued on, driven by belief that kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. As she ventured deeper into the forest, the trees grew thicker, the air heavier, the sun was hidden by the canopy above, and the path became less clear. There was an eerie silence that seemed to settle around her, as if the forest itself were watching. Finally, as the day began to fade into twilight, Fatima reached the clearing where the prince was said to live. It was a place of strange beauty, ancient, twisted trees surrounded a large stone altar, a remnant of an age-long past, and there in the center sat the creature, half man, half goat. Fatima stood frozen, staring at the figure before her. The creature's eyes, those sad dark eyes, met hers, and a deep shiver ran through her. The prince, or the monster, spoke. "You came," he said softly, his voice filled with disbelief. "No one ever comes. No one has ever cared." Fatima took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart filled with compassion. "I have come because I believe in you. I believe that you are more than your curse. Tell me your name." The creature hesitated, looking at her with a mixture of confusion and pain. "I was once Prince Rafik of Tarsus. Now, I am nothing more than a monster." Fatima smiled gently. "I don't believe that. I believe you can still change. I believe kindness can free you from your curse." Rafik, the cursed prince, looked at Fatima for a long moment, as if seeing something he had not seen in a long time. Hope. But there was skepticism in his heart. How could kindness break the curse? He had been lost in bitterness and pride for so long that he no longer remembered what true compassion felt like. Fatima returned the next day and the next, bringing him food, offering him companionship, and talking to him about the world outside the forest. As the days passed, she noticed something in Rafik begin to change. His monstrous form remained the same, but his eyes softened. The harshness of his words dulled. He no longer spoke with bitterness, but with curiosity about the world beyond his self-imposed exile. One evening, Fatima arrived to find Rafik sitting by the edge of the clearing, looking out at the horizon. He turned to her with a question in his eyes. "Why do you help me?" he asked. "Why show kindness to a monster?" Fatima sat beside him, her voice quiet but firm. "Because every heart deserves a second chance. No one is beyond redemption." And with those words, Rafik felt something stir deep within him. The last remnants of his pride, which had once dominated his heart, began to fade. In its place, he felt a warm feeling he had not known in many years. As the days turned to weeks, Fatima and Prince Rafik grew closer. The forest, once a dark and forbidding place, slowly became a home for both of them. Fatima continued to care for him, offering kindness in every possible way. She would bring him herbs from the village, cook him simple meals, and share stories of her life, her family, and the world beyond the forest. Rafik had never known such kindness before. He had grown up with the luxuries of a palace, surrounded by sycophants and flatterers, never experiencing genuine affection or compassion. The only love he had ever known was the love of his parents. Parents who had long since given up on him as he transformed into this beast. But with Fatima, something inside him began to shift. At first, it was small. He began to help her gather firewood or protect her from wild animals in the forest. But these were minor acts compared to the deep selflessness Fatima had shown him. One afternoon, while they sat by the river, Fatima noticed a small thin flower growing by the water's edge. It was delicate and rare, one that only bloomed once every few years. She bent down to pluck it, but as her fingers brushed the petals, she heard a rustle in the trees behind her. Before she could turn around, Rafik had already stepped forward, his hands gently taking the flower from her. "I'll do it," he said softly. His voice tingled with a newfound gentleness. "This flower is too precious for someone so fragile as you." Fatima looked at him, surprised by the gesture. It was the first time he had done something for her without her asking. His eyes met hers, and she saw something in them, a glimmer of the man he had once been, buried under the layers of bitterness and arrogance. "Thank you," she said, her voice warm with gratitude. "You have changed, Rafik." He met her gaze, his heart tight in his chest. "I don't know if I have changed. I don't know if it's even enough to undo the course." Fatima placed a hand on his arm. "You have taken the first step. You are showing kindness, and that's what matters. The rest will come in time." But as much as Rafik wanted to believe her, a gnawing doubt lingered in his heart. He feared that no matter how kind he became, the curse would never leave him. He had been so cruel for so long, and his transformation had been so complete. Could he really be redeemed? One evening, as Fatima and Rafik sat by the fire, the forest around them quiet and still, a sudden gust of wind stirred the leaves, and a figure appeared from the shadows. It was the old woman, the one who had cursed Rafik so many years ago. Rafik tensed immediately, his body coiling in readiness for a confrontation. But Fatima, sensing no malice in the woman, stepped forward, her heart filled with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "You have come," Fatima said softly. "Are you here to see if the prince has changed?" The old woman nodded, her ancient eyes scanning Rafik as if looking for something. Her voice, as frail as a whisper, echoed through the stillness of the night. "Do you feel it, Prince Rafik?" she said. "Do you feel the change within you?" Rafik looked down at his hooves, the fur still covering his skin. He felt a heavy burden in his chest, a deep sorrow that he could not name. "I feel something, but it is not enough. I have done many things for her," he gestured to Fatima. "But is it enough to undo the curse?" The old woman smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "A curse like yours is not broken by mere deeds. It is broken by the heart. Your arrogance and pride have rooted themselves so deeply within you that only a true selfless act can save them completely." Rafik's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? What must I do?" She stepped closer, her voice a little more firm now. "The true test will come soon. If your heart is pure, the curse will break. But if there is still a trace of selfishness within you, you will remain as you are, a monster forever." Fatima stepped forward, her voice determined. "I will help him. He has changed. I know it in my heart. He deserves to be free." The old woman's eyes softened, and she looked at Fatima with something akin to respect. "You are brave, child. Perhaps you will be the one to show him the way." As the weeks passed, Fatima and Rafik continued their daily routine, but the weight of the old woman's words pressed heavily upon them. Rafik could not shake the thought that he was still not enough, still not pure enough to break the curse. He had been so cruel in his past life, and now that he was trying to atone, he feared it might never be enough to undo the years of suffering he had caused. Then, one day, the ultimate test arrived. A great drought swept through the kingdom of Tarsus. The land parched and cracked under relentless sun. The people of the kingdom began to suffer, their crops withering, their rivers running dry, desperation set in, and the villagers began to pray to the gods for salvation. Fatima, hearing the news from a passing traveler, felt an overwhelming urge to return to the village. "We must help them, Rafik," she said, determination in her eyes. "The kingdom is suffering, and it is up to us to help." Rafik hesitated. "But I am no longer a prince. What good would I do? I am nothing but a monster." Fatima shook her head. "You are more than that. You have kindness in your heart now. It is not the title you bear, but the actions you take that matter." Together, they returned to the village, and Fatima, with Rafik at her side, helped bring water to the parched fields, carrying heavy jugs from the well, distributing them to the suffering villagers. Rafik, once so proud and indifferent, worked tirelessly, his strength and determination helping the village survive the harsh droughts. Then one night, as the two of them stood together in the village square, the heavens opened. A gentle rain began to fall, soaking the earth, quenching the thirst of the land. The villagers cheered, their prayers answered. They looked upon the once feared monster, not with terror, but with gratitude. In that moment, Rafik felt something inside him shift. The heavy weight that had hung over him for so long, the fear, the self-doubt, the arrogance began to dissolve. The curse was finally lifted. The next morning, Fatima awoke to find the air around her still and peaceful. She went outside to check on Rafik, only to find him standing in the clearing, bathed in the soft morning light. As she approached him, she noticed that his form had begun to change once again. The fur that had covered his body was slowly fading, his horns shrinking, and his hooves turning back into human feet. The transformation was slow but unmistakable. As the last vestiges of the curse melted away, Rafik stood before her, once again a man. A man, but not the same man. He was no longer the arrogant prince who had once ruled over Tarsus with cruelty. His eyes, once cold and detached, were now warm and filled with gratitude. Fatima smiled, her heart swelling with joy. "You are free," she whispered. Rafik reached out, taking her hand in his. "It was you who freed me," he said softly. "You showed me that kindness is the greatest power of all." Fatima smiled. "It wasn't just me, it was you too. You chose to change." Rafik looked at her with admiration. "You have taught me that the heart, when open, can heal even the darkest wounds." With the curse finally broken, Rafik returned to Tarsus, where he was welcomed back as a man redeemed. He ruled wisely and justly, always remembering the lesson Fatima had taught him, that a true ruler leads with compassion, not power. As for Fatima, she remained by his side, not as a subject, but as an equal. Together they worked to rebuild the kingdom, ensuring that kindness, humility, and empathy will always guide their decisions. And so, the curse of the monster of Tarsus was lifted, not by magic or force, but by the purest of all human qualities, kindness.